Since our time together is going to be somewhat short, and in some cases I won't see you guys at all in person, I want to go through the first day letter, do this virtually so we don't have to use any of our precious class time to go through that stuff. And so I've got it open. You'll have a copy of it when you open it up on Classroom. And just going to run through the basics of this thing. First, this is American history. If you've already passed American history, you need to talk to your counselor, see what's up. But this is American history. And we are going to study American history from the Civil War to basically as close to today as we can get. So we start with a foundations unit. It's a fundamental term that we've got there. A lot of basics, some geography, some government stuff. And so a lot of basic, it's going to be stuff that we come back to over and over again throughout the years. And we just found that some students, without reviewing the branches of government, found it sometimes difficult to cover that stuff. So we're going to start with a foundations unit. And then when we get into the actual process of studying American history and those changes over time, we're going to start with the Civil War, Reconstruction, and westward expansion. That'll be our first unit of study. The next unit after that is the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era. Those two terms might not mean anything to you at this point. That's fine. That's why you're taking this class. It's industrialization. You talked about it in world history. So it's the Industrial Revolution in the United States is what we're looking at there. Then the next unit of study is how the United States becomes a world power with its emergence on the world stage, culminating in winning or helping to win World War I. That should take us through first semester, and then we'll come back in January and start with the 1920s and good times in America, with some downside, obviously, because it leads to the Great Depression. So it's not all great. So that's our next unit after we come back from break. Then we look at World War II, the biggest war that human beings have ever fought, and the fallout from that, including the Cold War that takes us all the way through the 1990s. Then we step back and go into some of the social changes of the 50s and 60s with a real big emphasis on the civil rights movement. And then with the time that we have left, we get as close as we can to today. All right, so classroom materials for you guys that are virtual, none of this will be something that you have to worry about. For those of you that are in class, you have to have your Chromebook ready to go. Of all years where you need to have your Chromebook charged and ready to go, it is this year. I mean, there's no excuse, no other reason. You have to have it. When you come in here, it would be a very good thing. Really, it's almost a must that you have some sort of headphones or earbuds. Most of you guys carry some with you all the time. Just make sure it's something that cooperates with your Chromebook, because there will be times in class where you'll be watching a video clip or something in the notes where you'll need to hear something. And if you don't have headphones, you're going to have to just listen while everybody else listens, and it is a huge mess. So make sure that you have some sort of earbuds or headphones in your stuff with you. Everything we do will be on Google Classroom. That's your go-to. Sometimes we use other websites like Edpuzzle or Quizlet, but Google Classroom will direct you to those places. So that's where you need to go every day for this class. You start with Google Classroom and then go from there. Most of the times you'll stay on Google Classroom, but that's where you need to go. The online textbook is accessed through the Clever site. They're still working on syncing our classes with the online text, so we won't be using it right off the bat anyway. It's our foundations unit doesn't really use the textbook, so even though it's not there yet, it will be on Clever by the time we get to it. All right. The classroom expectations, obviously, those of you guys that are doing virtual, you just have to behave yourself around the house. But for the rest of us, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Um, be here before the bell rings. That's usually not an issue. We are not going to gather at the door. That's a pet peeve of mine anytime, but especially in a time where we're trying to maintain social distancing. We're staying in our desks the whole hour, and when the bell rings, that's when you guys can get up and leave. I have a policy that basically gives you 3 get out of class to go to the bathroom cards, and you don't have to really, it's not necessarily me giving you permission. It's all right. You got to cash in one of those chips. Things like speak when spoken to, raise your hand otherwise, take your hat off, your hood off. It's going to be tough enough for us to kind of see who's who with our masks to begin with, but you put a mask on and a hood down, I'm going to have no idea who's there. No phones unless I give you permission. And there's a lot of times where we are working on something in class where it's like, all right, if you guys want to listen to music while we do this, that's fine. I'll either tell you or you can ask, but it's not just something that, that you make a decision on your own. Oftentimes what I do with that is I give a class participation grade, and it's 100% based on, did you stay on task and did you stay off your phone? And if you did, you get full credit. If you got your phone out, you lose all the points. That's really simple and straightforward. As I go down the list here, again, Google Classroom, do not get out of your seat. Due dates, you're going to have due dates posted on Google Classroom. If you would happen to miss a due date, and I've already put it in Infinite Campus, you need to email me. All right. Actually, I take that back. I am going to set it up where there is a Google form. Forget the email thing. If you have a late assignment, there will be a Google form for you to complete to tell you, and it'll be on Classroom. And the Google form will ask you, what's the assignment? What did you get as a score if it's something that scores itself? And so that's how I will keep track of anything that wasn't turned in on time. Okay. It will go in Infinite Campus as a 0 until that happens. So if I've put it in Infinite Campus and it's a 0 and you get it turned in late, you have to fill out that late work Google form so I know to go check. Otherwise, I won't know. It's, in the old days when I started teaching, you turn in something late. I knew you turned it in because you gave me a piece of paper. Well, we're going all virtual with that. So if you turn in something late, I'm not going to know in most cases unless you alert me to that fact. So that's what that Google form is going to be all about. Okay. All right. There's my contact information, email address. That's the best way to get in contact with me because I can check that multiple times throughout the day. I sometimes check it in the evening. I make no promises as far as that goes. Be taking my kids to practices and games and whatever activities we can do what COVID allows us to do. So I will sometimes check it at night, but not all the time. So that's the best way to contact me is through my email address. All right, the grades, how's that going to break down? The biggest proportion of your grades are going to come from quizzes and tests. I think pretty much everything is going to be open note this year, just to keep everything on a level playing field. So the tests will still matter. They're still going to be the biggest part of the grade. It's just, for the most part, I'm going to change the format a little bit. Other stuff like study guides, homework, that's 20% of your grade. Bell ringers, short answer, kind of one question, exit slips, class participation, That's 10% of your grade. And then 10% of your grade are going to come from something called self-assigned points. I'll have a whole nother introduction for self-assigned points here in just a little bit. Be on the lookout for that in the next day or two. It's an assignment that takes all semester to complete, and you have lots of options to complete it. The basic takeaway is that you're going to build up 100 points. There are different assignments that build up to that 100 points. Some are worth 10, some are worth 15, some are worth 30 points. You complete those assignments as you choose. You get to 100 points. It should be a great gift that I'm giving you. So the deal is you just want to make sure that you have those complete, that those are due in December. Let me tell you about that more later on. And then 20% of your grade comes from the final exam in both semesters. This is not an EOC class, so the exams are worth 20% of your final grade. I do want to give you a heads up on 2 assignments that go throughout the year. I just mentioned self-assigned points again. I will be making a video about that in the next day or two about what self-assigned points are. So if you want to get started on those, you can do so. I do want to point out, as it says here, they are not extra credit. I have at least one student every year who, when we get to December, says something like, I didn't do self-assigned points because I don't need extra credit. Like, it's 100 points graded assignment. It is 10% of your semester grade. It is a letter grade. And it should be really easy because you're getting to pick and choose what you're doing. As long as you do them, and turn something in, you're going to get full credit. The other assignment that I want to mention, there's History Day. Let's see that. We work on History Day throughout the first semester into the second semester. January is largely turned over to creating a National History Day project. You are not required to enter the contest proper, but a majority of my students do, and we'll talk about why that is later on. So you're going to create a project whether you enter the contest or not, and that's something that we will spend a lot of time covering in class. I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that that's coming. The actual contest is held on the UMSL campus in normal times. We'll see, they might have to do it virtually this year. They did the state and the national competitions virtually last year, so we'll see what happens with COVID between now and then. But just want to give you a heads up that that's something that we're going to be working on off and on throughout the first semester and then into the second. The next thing there is basically the permission slip part of this. We have some movies that are parts of movies that we sometimes watch in class. Some of them are R-rated. If you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan or the movie Glory, you know that there are war scenes, so they are rated R. If you would, if your parents don't want you watching any of those movies or any of those in particular, they can shoot me an email, and there are other assignments that we can do instead of the movies. Now, a lot of times in the past, we've watched those films or parts of those films in class. We won't be doing that this year. We're not together enough to spend time like that. So we might set it up where there's some sort of shared viewing experience. So we'll see and cross that bridge when we come to it. But I just want everybody to be aware of the fact that we do that. Again, in normal circumstances, I would give you a paper copy of this and you would show it to your parents and they would sign it and return it. When we're basically trying to make sure that there's not a whole lot of materials exchanged back and forth. So if your parents are okay with this, if you're okay with all this, it's done deal here. But if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email. And I wish you continued good health.